This video is one of the videos from a course entitled MBTI Learning Styles, a Practical Approach for Educators, Parents, and Learners. This course is available on Udemy, Teachable, and Thinkific. If you're interested in just the book, which is also part of this course, you can find it on Amazon in both paperback and Kindle versions. So we're moving on now to that third section, so the third letter in the four-letter MBTI. Okay, this one is referring to your decisions, how you prefer to make your decisions. Do you make your decisions based on feeling and emotions, or do you base your decisions on thinking? So feelers are going to base their decisions on people, special circumstances, and how they might feel about a situation. Please note that our feelers, the third letter in, are on that left-hand side of the scale. So they're always looking at that personal side. They are as far away from the logical side as they can get. They are more interested in how this is going to interact and impact their personal relationships and their interrelationship skills. So this preference, look, again, how you like to make decisions. But let's look at the question. Do you put more weight on the personal concerns and the people that are involved? So look at that constantly, and that's going to help you to figure out whether you are a personal or logical, a feeler or a thinker. Now look at the frequency chart. Thinkers are only 40% of the population, whereas feelers are 60% of the population. So often we get stuck and we say, what's the data say? What does the data say? What are the statistics? What are the information on this? And if you're that kind of person, you're really in a situation where you're dealing mostly with feelers who want to understand how it impacts them and their relationships. Remember, we're talking about how you make decisions here. This is the part of the personality that we're discussing. The key word for a feeler is personal. How is it personal to you? How is it personal to your family? How is it personal to their friends, to those around them, their community, their neighborhood, their country? It doesn't matter, but how is it personal? We're going to look at the learner question of how will this help others? So this kind of a learner, or this kind of a preference, that decision-making preference, is really, they are so focused on other-oriented. They want to help people all the time. So generally you're going to find that people who are in the counseling fields tend to be feelers. So now we're going to jump into that learning style. So feelers really focus on the values and the needs of those around them, on human beings, and they're quick to recognize the consequences of all knowledge and information and decisions as they relate to a personal experience. So think of that. They are more interested in the personalized side of every decision they make than maybe the statistical side. They are also quick to forgive. These are people who are peacemakers, and they excel in that counseling part, as we already talked about. They're going to always look for opportunities to praise other people. I call these people builders, right? They're the ones that build up people around them. These learners, they need a solid and very well-established relationships with their teachers and with other learners. So any way that you can do to help yourself or to help your students to make those kind of connections within the classroom is going to aid that learning experience. We also want to give them an atmosphere of relationships that are built on compassion, trust, and respect. So these feelers are generally the ones that if somebody does something that is offensive, they're going to think that they don't like them. Whereas maybe the person that did the offensive act really wasn't thinking about them at all. Now, information and facts really are important to them, but they're not as important as how they relate to that personal side. Here's another really cool thing about feelers. They're persuasive. They can convince people about anything, right? So these make great marketing people. They will also prefer to study what appeals to them most, but they will give in because they do like to please others. Here's our cognitive environment. So let's pull together some of that information we have taken from those generalized spaces and put them into a cognitive environment. What does their classroom look like? So their classroom needs to be a positive, harmonizing environment. So Malcolm Knowles, who is the founder of self-directed learning, he calls this a warm learning environment. So I like the idea of the word warm learning environment, because when you think of positive and harmonizing and warmth, now you've got a feeling with it. It's like being hugged inside of a quilt, right? Or being hugged, period. So you really want to think about that as you are considering what kind of environment that a feeler needs. They really, really need a accepting place to be. And they prefer to learn from someone who is very personable. They don't care so much if you're organized or not organized or how the lecture is organized, as long as you're personable. If you're kind and you're compassionate and you're funny, all those pieces, that's going to be more important to them than even the information. So as a teacher, you need to be very personable. Now, contentions, though, even if it is not between the learner and the instructor, but it's between the peers, is really going to derail that learner. That learner is going to struggle something fierce with any kind of learning within the classroom. There can be no contentions. And they're going to learn best when they've connected with others. Now, that shouldn't be too much of a surprise when we think about their keyword, which is personal. They're going to like group work and partners, and those kind of components are going to be successful for their learning of any piece of information. When you look onto how we can assist these students as an educator, we really want to provide them with opportunities to learn inside of relationships. So no matter what it is that you're teaching, find a personal aspect to it, find a connection for them. You're going to use group activities. Well, when you do that, please make sure that you give a group some guidelines. You want to do everything you can to give these feelers an opportunity to learn the most effectively way that they can, which is with others, but to pull out that contention piece. So by giving them guidelines on how to run a group activity or group learning, it's going to increase their effectivity, their production, their communication, and even their ability to collaborate. But most importantly, it's going to pull out some of that negativity and that angst that comes from that first group development point. We're looking to look at reciprocal teaching. What a wonderful opportunity for feelers, because since they like to be the counselors, they will be wonderful as teaching and helping somebody else to learn, and especially mentoring. So if you can find somebody who needs help in an area that a feeler has already excelled in, and you assign that person to them, that feeler is going to excel. The most important piece to remember, though, is that correction. I know, not correcting me, but correction, period. A feeler does not accept correction well. They understand compassion, they have understanding, but when you correct a feeler, it can be devastating to the learning experience as well as your relationship. So make sure that you pull a feeler aside and that you correct them in a very, very personal area where no one is going to realize what's being said. Make sure it's done with tact, and make sure that you mostly use positive experiences. If you can avoid the criticism altogether and just focus on the positive side, I promise that those feelers are going to adapt themselves, because they're people pleasers, and they're going to adapt themselves in order to become what you would like them to be. Learners. So if you're a learner and you're a feeler, what are some things you can do? Wow. You know, this is really hard sometimes, and I think the hardest thing for feelers is that when you walk into a situation as a feeler and you find some kind of contention or discord, you immediately want to say, oh my gosh, what did I do? Right? Because you're a people pleaser. So you don't want to do that. Remember that not all the discord or contention in a group or in a classroom is about you. It could be about something completely unrelated, and it should not be a reflection upon you at all. So one of the best things you can do is to build those personal relationships. Once you build those personal relationships, if you walk into a contentious situation, you're going to be more capable and armed with skills and tools to be able to discover if that contention or frustration is about you, or if it's really about the situation. Or maybe somebody just broke up with their girlfriend or boyfriend. Maybe it has nothing to do with you, right? Also, find a study buddy. An intuition learner is a great match for a feeler, because the intuition person is always going to use those 5 senses and try to constantly search for answers to the question why. And as a feeler, you are also very focused on those emotions, right? So you're really combining and using those senses together in a very proactive way. Using reciprocal teaching is a positive thing you can do as a learner. Study all the time as if you are learning that so that you can teach someone else, even if you're not going to. If you do that, you're going to be more in tune to what you're learning. Be sure that you focus on the information, even outline it if you need to, or create lesson plans. This is going to create opportunity for you to assimilate the information as if you had been teaching. Using colored markers, things that make things stand out, highlighters. Ponder ways that you connect your information, anything new, into an interpersonal way of something that you already have learned. But the greatest thing that you can do as a learner is to ponder, how can this information help me to help others? Always remember that your word is personal. That's your keyword. Your question is, how is it going to help me to help others? And as a learner, if you keep doing that, you're going to be able to assimilate and to learn this knowledge that you need in ways to really help you to help others.